Okay, let's talk about the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists. Let's talk about the Bill of Rights. This is going to be the time immediately following the writing of the U.S. Constitution. So once the U.S. Constitution is written, this is when we get the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Now that the Constitution has been drafted, they had to get it ratified by at least 9 states. Ratify means to approve something. Each state would have a chance to look it over and propose any changes that they want to make to the US Constitution. Once 9 states ratify it, it would then replace the Articles of Confederation. So, for the time being, even though the US Constitution is written, they still had to get it approved, or else the Articles of Confederation would stay. We immediately see two sides start to form. We have the Federalists and we have the Anti Federalists. The Federalists wanted to ratify the new Constitution and wanted a strong national government. The Anti Federalists opposed the new Constitution and wanted a weak national government. So they were complete opposites. A political fight breaks out as each side tries to convince the public and ratifiers of which side is right and which side is wrong. Each side has valid points. Each side, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, to get their points across to the public, they'll make speeches, but for the most part, they end up writing a series of essays that they publish in newspapers. This is the way that they got, messages across. Was they would write an essay, and then a newspaper would publish it, and then a bunch of people would read it, and that's how change was made. The Federalists are famous for writing the Federalist Papers, very important documents in U.S. history, and their arguments were based around these three principles: that the nation needed taxes. So we had to have national taxation to fund the central government. Again, the central government just means national government, they go hand in hand. They also argued that we needed a standing army for a strong national defense and that a strong central government needed checks and balances. So, those three branches that we have, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, that comes with the US Constitution, there needs to be a check and balance system, meaning that one branch can't have too much power than another branch. The Anti-Federalists, they published their concerns and essays as well, and they argued that if the government had the power to tax, it would become too repressive, meaning that they would just keep increasing the taxes and they would keep taking the people's money. They also argued that if the government had an army, that they would use it against their own citizens. And they also argued that establishing a balance of powers between national and states governments were necessary. They did not want the national government to be stronger than the states government. They thought that there either should be some sort of balance or that the states should be stronger than the national one. So again, they're complete opposites. You can see that with the Anti-Federalists, a lot of their concerns they come from what happened to them during their time as colonies. All of those three things that they listed, those were things that happened to them when they were being repressed as colonists. So they were afraid of just repeating the same mistakes from the past. In the end, the two sides came to a compromise. The biggest concern of the US Constitution is that nowhere in the documents did it list humans' basic rights. The Federalists argued that they were implied and that they did not need to be written down, and the Anti Federalists argued that they needed to be written down so that they cannot be violated. In order to get the US Constitution ratified, the two sides compromised and they added the Bill of Rights to the document. The Bill of Rights is our first 10 amendments, some of which include, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, and freedom to petition. This also includes due process of law, protection against illegal search and seizures, some of our basic core amendments. So those are going to be our Bill of Rights, our first 10 amendments. So, in order to get the US Constitution ratified, they decided to add the Bill of Rights to the document. This made both sides happy, and this is what gives us our US Constitution that we have today. So, because of this argument between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, we get the Bill of Rights. Let's quickly go over the Federalist, the Anti-Federalist, and the Bill of Rights one more time. The Federalists supported a strong national government with the ability to tax, have a standing army, and they believed in no need for the Bill of Rights. The Anti-Federalists did not support the ratification of the US Constitution. They wanted a Bill of Rights, and they feared that the government was going to become too powerful and eventually take rights away from the people. They thought that states should have more power than given, and they didn't agree with the tax system being set up. In the end, the Bill of Rights is added as a compromise to get the US Constitution passed. The Bill of Rights listed people's individual liberties and limited the power of the government. So today, we still have our US Constitution, we still have our Bill of Rights, which is our first 10 amendments, and then many more amendments have been added since then.